Y'all, I think I made an OC. I'm not usually the type to make an original character. Typically, when I paint, it's an imaginative portrait with a few facial features that I think are interesting, but they're not characters really, they're just like one-off figures. But when I was planning this print for my enamel pin crowdfund, which by the way you should check out if you like spooky cute stuff, I encountered the need to actually design a character. I knew I wanted to have some kind of strawberry themed imp coming out of a summoning circle, and I needed to figure out what a strawberry-themed imp looks like. So here she is. She doesn't have a name, I've just been calling her Strawberry Imp. I'm totally open to name suggestions, and I actually want to encourage you to draw her in your style. If you do, tag me on Twitter or Instagram. I want to see your straub cuties. I want to do a series of shorts on specific aspects of my Clip Studio Paint process, like little mini tutorials. But this seems like a good opportunity to do a general overview of how I use the program. I always start out by making a canvas with a transparent background, and then adding a layer and filling it with white. Somebody in the comments to one of my prior videos told me I could just use the paper feature, which automatically creates that first layer. But my process is just a leftover from how programs like Photoshop and Affinity Photo work, where a transparent background is in an annoying setting and it's not just a layer that you can toggle on and off. You've like gotta go find it in a menu. So I always just create it myself. Old habits die hard, I guess. I always start out with small thumbnails using the default design pencil brush that comes loaded with Clip Studio Paint. It's a really solid brush. Usually the default brushes in a program are like kinda meh, but Clip Studio comes with some really good brushes. I've started using this brush for both my sketch and my line art, since I like the subtle texture and softness that it gives compared to a pen brush. When I do want crisper and firmer line art, I like to use the Real G Pen brush in the pen tool, although I've modified it a bit so it doesn't taper to such a fine point. This modification makes it feel like I'm using a micron pen, which I like. I like to do all of my line art on a vector layer because that lets me make tweaks to the position and width of individual lines without having to redraw the whole thing. Plus, if I've found that I've made the canvas too small, which has happened before, vector layers upscale much better than raster layers or, your normal layer. Vector layers don't get like weird pixely chunks when they upscale, so if in the event I need to increase the size of my drawing, this lets me do it much easier. Once my line art is done, I color in the whole figure one base color, usually like either a light gray or I just use whatever color I'm going to use for the skin tone. I usually use the Lasso Fill with No Gaps tool that I mentioned in a previous Clip Studio Paint tutorial. I'll link that video here for you to watch later. Using this tool makes it easy to separate the whole figure from the background, so I can do all of my coloring without having to worry too much about coloring inside the lines. After I have my base, I color my flats with the lasso tool on separate clipping mask layers, in case I want to change the color of an individual piece later. If you're not sure how to make a clipping mask, it's this little button. Tapping it forces everything on the layer to only appear if there's pixels on the layer below. I'll have a short out on Tuesday going into more detail, plus more tutorials to come, so hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss those videos in the future. The Lasso Fill tool makes quick work of coloring things in, especially if there's a lot of detail like in the hair. Otherwise, I'd be stuck coloring in the old-fashioned way and it would take hours. Seriously, Clip Studio Paint has halved the time that it takes me to work on a painting, and they look better than they ever did when I was using Photoshop. That's not a knock on Photoshop because Clip Studio isn't a photo editor, but every program has its strengths and illustration is Clip Studio's. Typically my shading process starts with a multiply layer. This is also on a clipping mask so it clips to that big base layer that I made before. And I'll use a color anywhere from pink to indigo, depending on the lighting of the scene. A multiply layer makes it so that everything I paint will show up darker no matter what the color underneath of it is. It's a really quick way to do shading so I don't have to color pick multiple different shades of each color in the scene. It just adds it on top to make everything darker. I've been shading with this marker brush and textured blending brush that I showcased in a Clip Studio video before. The subtle texture it adds is really satisfying on a digital painting, and it stops it from being like chronically smooth. After I've filled in where all of the shadow layers are using my multiply layer, I'll add highlights on an add glow or a screen layer. Which one I use depends on how strong I want the highlights to be. Sometimes I'll even use both. Screen adds a soft highlight, while Add Glow makes it really bright and strong. I have a particular set of hair brushes that I use to create the highlights in the hair, which I'll link in the description, but oftentimes I go back and add my own more detailed highlights on top of that. It's at this point that the painting that I'm working on today diverged from my usual process a little bit. After the shadows and highlights, I usually only add a soft gradient on an overlay layer to try to get some vibrancy into the scene. But here I really tripled down on the number of blending mode layers that I added to try to get really vibrant neon lighting. I ended up with multiple overlay and hard light and multiply layers on top of each other. This is outside my normal process and is the first time I've done something like this, so I'll have to experiment and see what works best for me. But I really like the effect that it made in the vibrancy of the colors, so maybe just adding copious different blending modes is the way to go. I also did something else that I don't normally do, which is color my line art different colors. Usually I just keep it one color. Not black, I'll usually do like a dark purple, but I don't usually add extra colors on top of that. The line art at the top of the hair is blue, while it gradates to pink at the bottom, and then I even used some teal in parts like the strawberries and the wings. Let me know if you would like a tutorial on how I did that, and I'll make one. The bottom summoning circle graphic is something that I made in a vector program. I plan on making apparel pieces out of it, but you can also help me make the pin version of this by supporting me on Indiegogo. And the print of this piece is also available as an add-on reward. This is the only place you'll ever be able to get her as a print, so don't wait. If you back now, you'll also get this bookmark for free. We're 70% of the way funded, and we just need that final push. By the way, these tiny little straub imps that you see in the background with the faces are all backers who donated during the live stream while I created this art. They got to choose their face. Back to the art, to achieve that glow from the summoning circle, I duplicated the image that I made, and then I added a motion blur in an upwards direction. I then duplicated that motion blurred layer and set it to hard light to make it really feel like it's glowing. Add some sparks from a scatter brush and you get a real sense of a magically lit circle. For the background of this piece, I mostly made a splotchy sort of gradient, and I wasn't happy with how plain it looked. So I added an image of some sacred geometry that a friend sent to me, and then I blurred it so that it faded into the background and just made a subtle pattern back there. I would love to see your interpretation of this strawberry imp, so don't forget to enter the draw this in your style and tag me either on Twitter or Instagram so I can see it. I'll pick a winner from Twitter and Instagram and I'll send them a print of this piece, and if our pins meet the funding goal, I'll send them a pin too. And as a reminder, hop over to my Enamel Pin Indiegogo to grab a pin, a print, or a sticker pack, or all of them for yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.